What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel and to another 3D model. This week, we're going to be making a post-apocalyptic hideout. In this video, we're going to go over the 3D modeling, we're going to quickly go over those UVs and how I prepared the model, and then we're going to jump into Substance Painter and do the texturing. So we have lots to cover. Without further ado, let's just dive into it. So if you're familiar with this channel, you'll know some of my favorite models I like to make are post-apocalyptic. I love the dark, kind of abandoned, rough theme. It just looks fun and interesting, and there's lots of cool stories you can create behind these images and behind these models. So when I was deciding what to make for this week, I just quickly searched online, and honestly, this was the first photo on the page that jumped out to me. It's one of those weeks where I didn't have to dig too far to try to think about what I wanted to recreate for this week, and I just really love this photo and I love the concept, and I thought this would be a lot of fun to recreate. Now, to be honest, I'm not sure who actually created this concept. I'm going to do a little bit of digging later on and try to find who the original creator was, but a big shout out to them, and I'm going to put a link in the description below to this reference if you want to check it out. But I want to give a shout out to the artist that actually created the concept, so whenever I find out who exactly created this, I will put their name in the description as well. Now, like I said, post-apocalyptic themes or models are some of my favorites to make. And when I saw this image online, I instantly wanted to recreate it. Now, I always say it's nice to try to think of some sort of backstory. It really helps bring this model to life if you kind of envision who's using it or where it's being used. And in my head, when I was looking at this photo, I was imagining some person that was living in a post-apocalyptic world, maybe on their own, not sure if other people exist or are alive on the planet. So they're kind of piecing together scrap metal to build some sort of shelter and protect themselves from other people that may be trying to get other resources or steal resources from other people. So it's kind of like a Fallout theme I was imagining in my head. And it was maybe one person that was kind of scavenging to survive in this post-apocalyptic world. So we're gonna try to incorporate some of those elements. I thought it'd be fun to add maybe a big keep out sign on the front, so they're trying to maybe keep out other raiders from taking their loot, or trying to hide away from other people that are just threatening them. I don't know, maybe something along those lines. Definitely some post-apocalyptic vibes. So that's the story I was trying to incorporate into the model. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the problem with a model like this is that it's very tempting to continue adding objects to it to bring it to life. You can honestly spend weeks, even months, slowly refining shapes, making them more complex looking, really creating some cool story and adding lots of really cool technology or different post-apocalyptic objects to the scene just to make it more interesting to look at. And of course, the problem is lack of time, like in every video I create on this channel. So it was really challenging to hold back on objects I wanted to add, or just simplify a lot of objects to cut back on a lot of time. Well, I had around 4 hours tops, so we had to kind of limit ourselves with how many objects I wanted to add into the scene. We're gonna start off with just making the main objects, like the whole platform, the ladder, the main shell of the building, and then we can slowly add more objects to it depending on how much time we have left. Now, looking back, I really wish I added a lot more elements to it, and this is something we're going to cover later on when we go over the UVs, but we're also going to go over other objects I wish I added to it if I only had more time to invest to this art piece. Now, of course, this is not a game ready prop, so it's not going to be optimized, it's not going to be really lean and efficient for a game engine, so that's something I did want to make a note of before we get too far into the video. If you were going to use this as a main prop or something in your video game, it would need a little bit of optimization. So you'd probably reduce the amount of textures, you'd definitely reduce the amount of polys. There's lots of things we could have done to actually save on polys, and that's something I'll also go over later on when we go over the UV mapping process. But it's just something I wanted to make a note of ahead of time. So if you are recreating this for a video game, there's some things I would avoid. For example, the walls on my structure, on my platform, I added a bunch of like rivets to kind of, or edge loops to make it all bumpy. You can just add that directly into your texture, and you can just get away with adding all of those polys to your little metal sheets. And there's lots of other little things we could have done. So we'll go over that, like I said, later on. But it's always good to think about how the model is going to be used and where it's going to be used before you get too far into the modeling. It's always a lot of extra work to have to come back and rework things rather than really thinking about how it's going to be used. You can pre-plan your model, and you can just save a lot of time in the whole process. Now, enough of me talking and dragging this on. We have lots of objects we have to create. So let's continue blocking some stuff out, and let's slowly piece together our post-apocalyptic hideout. All right, so here is the Post-Apocalyptic Hideout in its finished form. And everything is basically the exact same. I really only changed one small thing, and that was just making this small opening here on the floor. So if you look at my reference photo, they had some sort of like netted pattern or something like that in this little platform piece. And I really like the idea of seeing through the object, not having one plain just metal sheet. I like the fact that you can see through it, like it's more pieced together, and there's these little like metal platform pieces that are moved around to kind of piece together the structure. And it really helped, in my mind, make it look more pieced together and not as in line and perfect. And I like how it looked a little bit more broken up in this post-apocalyptic world we were imagining everything was living. So I just quickly moved some of these sheets over and just simply opened it up so I can see through the floor. But other than that, everything is basically the exact same. Now there's a few things I wanted to go over. I guess first and foremost, we'll go over the UV mapping and how I prepared the model. So like I said, this was not a game ready model. And one of the areas, actually this is something I kind of go against in a lot of my videos. So I usually say it's good to reduce the amount of textures you use. It's just good practice because a lot of game ready assets, some of the biggest performance heavy parts of a model are the amount of textures it has. Obviously poly count is important, but texture sizes and texture amounts are pretty huge in game environments. So I always like to limit my texture amounts, and when it came to this model, I honestly did not do that. So if I open up this folder, you'll see I have 6 different textures applied. And I think that's a little bit high for a model like this. We definitely could have simplified this or reduced or condensed some of these into, one texture group, not having 6. Because the model took a lot longer than I anticipated, which means that the UV mapping process took a lot longer than I anticipated. At the end of the video, I was just kind of throwing everything together really quickly so we can move on to the texturing. I didn't have a lot of time to optimize the textures. So that's something really important I did want to mention before we get a little bit further into the UVs, is that if you're using this as a video game, I think honestly 6 is a little bit high. Maybe 3 or 4 would be a little bit more fitting for an object like this, maybe more like 3. I mean, even 2, 1 texture would be great, but there's so many little objects. If I really was planning to get nice detail and resolution out of some textures, so I decided just to break them off into really as many as I needed. I wasn't trying to focus on texture amounts. That being said, I used 6, so let's go over those really quickly so I can show you how I prepared those. So opening up my UV editor here, I'm gonna click on the first folder, which is all the metal pieces. So simple as that, all my metal sheets that I have. I also added the cloth pieces as well, but it's just all the metal. This really wasn't too important, and some things did backfire in the end. I was planning to add a bit more detail into some of these metal pieces, but they were so small and the textures were looking a little bit, not necessarily pixelated, just not as detailed as I wanted. So adding like graffiti or markings on them was kind of out of the question. I didn't want to go back and rework some of the UVs. So I just kept this very straightforward, but the plan was to have different metal sheets and different textures on different metal pieces. So I basically separated them all. Some of them are overlapping. So like this corner one, for example, these two are sharing the same UV space, but most of them are actually spread out. That way I can add different colors, and added some diamond plate textures, like some bump pattern to some of these metal sheets. Just I thought it'd be interesting to see more variety between the metal, and having more color variation and different grunges would just make it look a little bit more used and beaten up, and you wouldn't see a lot of repeating patterns. So that's why I just split this up into its own texture group. And the second one is just the building. Like I said, well, this was definitely the main focus of the model, and I was planning to have some cool kind of like bump pattern, and I just wanted it to look really nice in the textures and have nice resolution. So I simply broke this up into its own group and didn't really worry about it. I just separated this and moved on to the next. So I did have a little bit of extra room, so I added in this tiny bucket as well, which is very small, and then these little concrete blocks as well that are holding up my flag. So the last minute I just kind of squeeze things in to take advantage of my real estate. You're always trying to fill in the 0 to 1 space as much as you can, pack them in tightly, and that's why I moved these other little pieces over to this UV set as well. So the third group and third texture are the other main metal pieces. Now this was the one UV set that I would probably do a bit different now looking back. So originally I wasn't really thinking about it too much. I just wanted to add all these metal pieces, the railings into one. This easily could have been condensed into another one if I really had to rework one of them. This is probably one of the main ones because there's not too many objects on here. But the one thing that I did mess up with, well, not necessarily mess up, but I didn't pre-plan it too well, was when I was doing the textures, I thought it'd be cool to add some sort of graffiti on these metal pieces. And because a lot of these are actually overlapping, for example, these two are overlapping and this one is overlapping. If I had a big graffiti mark on this side, you would see that repeating graffiti pattern on every other panel. So I had to avoid that, and the only UVs shells that I had that were unique were these two panels. So these are the two that I ended up adding graffiti on. But looking back, I wish I added a lot more. I think it would have been cool adding some nice markings or symbols that represent this post-apocalyptic world. Maybe some other things like keep out or friendly or something. I don't know. Just lots of things we could have incorporated into the textures, and I couldn't do that because I didn't plan my UVs too well. So that is something, looking back, or if you're recreating this yourself, I would definitely separate a lot of these shells so they're not overlapping, that we can add a little bit more uniqueness between all of these different metal panels. But of course, another really important thing was keeping those UV shells nice and straight. That way I can condense them all and fit them all nicely in my 0 to 1 space. All right, moving on, our fourth group was basically the door and all the windows and some of the other small components. So like I said, this also probably could have been condensed into another one like my other group that I have following up next. But to keep things nice and simple, I just separated them into their own texture set. The biggest one being the door. I wanted to have some cool text on the door. I ended up adding like keep out or something like that here. And if my texture or my UV shell was very small, it would be very pixelated and you wouldn't be able to get that detail. So that's just something I wanted to add as well. But like I said, there's not too many objects, so I probably could have condensed this as well into one of these other groups if I really had to. Moving on, our fifth group are basically the full platform. So all the legs, all the netting pieces on both sides. Now, if you're seeing the red or the pink show up, that's just because all of these legs, which I can highlight, they're all overlapping and sharing the same UV space. I knew you wouldn't see too much repeating patterns. For example, the wood showing on the outside here and the pole is showing on here. So you're not going to really be facing these all, I guess these ones technically are sort of facing the same way, but you're not going to see too much of a repeating pattern, so I wasn't worried about it. I just wanted to really get the UVs done as quickly as possible. So I just condensed all of this into one texture set and moved on to the next. Once again, trying to fill in all those empty spaces, so I ended up adding the sign, which I wanted text on, so I wanted to make this pretty large. For example, you can see the back side of the sign is a lot smaller in UV size, not just because I wasn't going to have any text or any detail on the back, and I can really just save space by reducing that UV shell size and making the more important ones like the front side a little bit larger. So little things you can do to get the most out of your textures and your UV shells. This one's pretty straightforward as well. And then the last one, well actually while we're here, all these tires, for example, are sharing the exact same UV space, and to keep myself from seeing repeating patterns, it was really important to flip some of these tires around, to rotate them, so you're never seeing the exact same side of a tire as another tire in the scene. So everything is kind of rotated a different direction to avoid seeing those similarities. And that's something I did as well with all these wood pieces. So all these are sharing the same UV space, and you definitely see repeating patterns. But what I did was just some of them I just flipped upside down, some of them I rotated around. So you're always seeing a different side of the exact same panel, which tricks you into thinking that they're all unique, when in reality they're not. All right, and the last group and texture set was all the other objects. So just the small objects in my scene, the wires, my little AC unit, solar panel, you know, everything else that was just small, I just kind of threw into the final texture set. All right, and that's basically how I prepared this model. So I'm just gonna add a texture to each group. So I would have 6 different UV sets when we jump into Substance Painter. But another really important thing I wanted to go over, well, not necessarily important, but I mentioned at the very beginning, was all the other objects I wish I added. And like I said, When it comes to a model like this, you can honestly spend weeks and months, just endless days adding things. There's so many cool things you think of when you're making it, and it just obviously results in more time. Like every modeling time you spend, you need to spend more time UVing those models, and it kind of adds up really quickly. So I had to avoid a lot of things or simplify a lot of things as well. So some of the things I really had to simplify. This AC unit, there's really not much to it. It's pretty plain looking. This is something I wish I added more components to make it look a little bit more complex. Definitely adding some more wires hanging out, maybe a little panel that was half open on the side with some controls that are underneath, like buttons to press, or some sort of like electric box maybe on the side, I was thinking, with wires going into it, like switches you can turn on and off. There's really endless things. If you look at a lot of these shapes, like these little things that are holding up my water trough or whatever you call it up here, these are just simple rectangles. And I wish I added a more complex components to make it look like it was welded on a little bit better, or I don't know, screwed in with some heavy bolts or some chains. Definitely one thing, if I could go back and add anything to this, I would add a lot more wires. I feel like wires in general always make it look interesting to look at, like just simply with these ones on top or these ones hanging. I wish I added more. I wish I added more hanging, kind of wrapped around the poles would have been cool. Maybe some more wires that were helping, a rope that was helping hold up the netting. These netting components are very straightforward. There's really not much to it. And I wish I added more bolts along the sides, or like I said, rope kind of attached that was hanging to help tighten this netting piece to keep it intact. There's really so much. If you look at this barrel, it's very simplified. There's not too much. I wish I added maybe some posters on the side that were stapled to it, or more wires definitely up here. This is actually one of the biggest components I simplified, was this solar panel. If you look at it, it's just a bunch of rectangles with this simple cube acting as some sort of like power source or something in the wires going into. This is definitely something also I wish I just made more interesting. It looks very simplified, and I feel like in ways it takes away from the model because it's like overly simplified. This is obviously me just critiquing my own work. Like, I'm still happy with it, but these are definitely areas that I feel like the model could have big improvements, and it can make it look a lot more interesting to the viewer. It's by having different, electrical boxes and wires hanging around, maybe some wire up here that was like bundled up into a big stack, like some extra extension cords, or maybe a simple extension cord that was hanging off the side, kind of dangling here. I don't know. Some posters actually would have been really cool, like post-apocalyptic era posters, maybe like pre-war or pre-post-apocalyptic posters that were pasted around, giving some sort of glimpse into what the life was like before this event happened. That was post-apocalyptic world. I don't know. There's so much we could have added. These lights on the side, there's not too much going on here. I wish I emphasized the light source a bit more, made it more shiny, maybe shining onto a poster that was here. Like I said, there's really endless things. Another thing was actually the ground. The ground was looking very plain, so I decided to add a bunch of tires and some boxes. But I feel like we could have incorporated more interesting objects on the ground, like maybe some sort of defensive structures, or maybe some barbed wire that was wrapped around to help prevent people from crawling up along the side. These are all little things that briefly crossed my mind, but I just didn't have time. Like adding barbed wire along the back would have been really nice, just because there's not too... I try to visualize these models from every perspective, and the front obviously has the most stuff going on, but I feel like when it comes to the side or the back, there's not too much going on here. That's a big reason why I added that graffiti piece on this panel. But I feel like barbed wire, at least along the back, would have been interesting. Maybe a little stack of extra barbed wire, or some boxes, or some food crates would have been really cool. Like a lot of components that were stacked along this wall here to fill in this empty space, just to make it look like you're kind of stashing stuff away. Hiding things from other people, maybe things you're finding in the world, you're stashing here for yourself. I also briefly thought about adding some sort of like camo drape that was like going over the roof to this wall, so it would help kind of hide away components or pieces or equipment that you had stashed underneath here. like a sleeping bag might have been cool, even though that would probably be inside. But all these different elements I really wanted to incorporate. I also wanted to add some emergency equipment. I thought it'd be cool in this post-apocalyptic world. Maybe the person in here is using the solar panels to try to reach other humans in the world to see if other people are existing, and having some like radio equipment on the ground here would have been really cool. So it kind of brings that element to life, as if this person's trying to like reach out to others, and having maybe an SOS pattern or something up here that was like SOS written, so maybe flying planes could potentially see it, or even like a little fire pit would have been cool. Actually, that would have been really cool. A little fire pit here with like a stand over it, as if you were making things before and the fire is now put out. Like I said, endless stuff you could add, and all of this would just take a lot more time. And I only had a day to really wrap this up, so really left me wishing I added more objects. And that's something I definitely wanted to talk about in this video, because this is probably one of the biggest struggles I always have as an artist when I'm making these assets, is choosing what to add and what to hold back. And there's always things after, when I look at these models and I'm going over them for the YouTube video, that I'm like, shit, I should have added this and I should have added that. And I don't know. This ladder is another thing I wasn't happy with. It kind of, well, first off, it doesn't really make sense to, like, how would you, I guess these are maybe straps are holding up and you would undo these, which would cause this back ladder piece to drop. I don't really know. I didn't think about how these components really fit together, but it'd be cool adding some sort of like mechanism, maybe up here similar to this one, that makes the ladder go up and down. So it looked more realistic, and it looked like it was actually being held up by something, or maybe something that was blocking this front piece from being used. Maybe like a metal platform that actually went back, and you can add something over top. You can slide over it to block people from crawling up. That's something that briefly crossed my mind I probably should have added. So like maybe another little metal piece here with like a little wall barrier with like a little hole cut out that you can slide and close and lock to help people from coming in and out. I don't know. That probably would have been helpful, but like I said, endless things. This is what makes all this stuff so fun, but also so challenging, is trying to choose what to add and what not to add. Anyways, enough of me talking about the UVs and all these objects I wish I added, because it's making me spot things, even more things that I wish I added, like clothes, cloth pieces, fabric pieces, I don't know, weapons. There's no weapons. Well, there should definitely be at least a weapon here hanging, leaning against the fence. Maybe like a harpoon gun would have been cool, or some bow and arrows, even some like laying arrows. I also thought adding bullet holes would have been cool. Once again, I couldn't do that because of how I prepared my UVs. If I had a bullet hole here, it'd be repeating on the exact same spot, and it would look very repeating. But if I was smarter with my layouts of my UV shells, I could have added some like extra bullet holes or some scratches from, I don't know, fights this person has gotten into with other people in this post-apocalyptic world. It's really endless. Anyways, like I said, enough of me talking about it. Let's just export this thing. We can jump over to Substance Painter and we can start the texturing. And don't forget, you can find the full UV mapping process in real time, and all of that is available on my Patreon page, which will be linked in the description below. All right, so now jumping over to Substance Painter, we can go ahead and load in that FBX file from Maya. And of course, we can go ahead and bake out those textures. Now, when it came to the texturing, I was going to use that main reference as my main inspiration or guide to work towards, let's say. So I really like the idea of the rusted metal on the platform and the different colors of metal pieces between all these pieces. I really like the variety of color and different kind of wear and tear. So that's something I wanted to incorporate. And a lot of times I don't use the downloadable textures that are on the Substance website, the materials website. And I use a lot of the pre-built-in materials that come with Substance Painter, just so it's easier for others to follow along that are just kind of starting out. They can use the exact same materials that I'm using. Now in this video, I thought it'd be fun to kind of go down the other route that I don't usually do and just download a bunch of cool materials that I found on their website. I just thought it'd be fun to change it up this week and use different materials that are available to all of us artists if you have a Substance account. And the best thing about this is it makes the texturing process a lot easier. You don't have to build all of these from scratch. You can use these as great foundations to work off of. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna download, kind of go through the website, find some cool materials that I think would be fitting, and we can just download those, drag those into our file, and apply them to our models. So if you have any questions about any specific materials, feel free to reach out. I'm thinking of maybe sharing some of these on my Patreon page. So if you're interested, check it out there. I will probably upload at least a couple of them that I use, so it's easier for you guys to find the exact same ones. But otherwise, don't get too caught up on specific materials I'm using. There's a library of tons of materials that you can use, and use whatever ones you think would be fun. You can just explore, kind of trial and error, download some, attach them onto certain objects, see what they look like, and kind of go from there. And another thing I like to do to speed up the process, so it depends obviously you as an artist how you want to work, but what I like doing is just filling up all these empty white meshes with some sort of material, and then once they're all filled in and I have some sort of direction in mind that I want to work towards, then I can start going back and adjusting things and changing values and adding fill layers and adding dirt and grunge. So dirt, for example, you won't see me add until the very end. Once everything is filled in, then I'll kind of do a dirt pass on everything, go back and start adding fill layers and different smart masks to create some sort of dirt and grunge and add different roughness values. So one big thing with metal, a little fun tip, is if you want to make your metal material look better, adding a roughness value to it will go so far. So just by adding a plain, so add a fill layer, change it into a black mask, turn off all the channels, only the roughness channel, go into the textures tab, drag on any of these maps and drag them onto your roughness channel, and you add some sort of different roughness value to these pieces. And it's gonna go such a long way. It's gonna help not make it look so flat and dull, and you really help bring it to life, especially in a post-apocalyptic world where everything's beaten up, has lots of elements that are hitting it. You wanna add nice and variety to that roughness, and hopefully to make it look realistic. So that's what I'm gonna do in this video. And we're also going to try to add different colors rather than keeping it pretty plain looking. I kind of want to make it like my reference photo. I really liked how they make the building kind of a green, and there was orange in that metal from the rust, and just a variety of colors can help make it look a bit more colorful and just more fun, hopefully, to look at for the viewer. And don't forget, if you want to see the full texturing process in real time, it will be part of that real-time video that will be uploaded to my Patreon page, and you can find a link to it in the description below. And you can also check out the Substance Painter file. I'm going to upload all the working files, so if you want to get your hands on those and see how I prepare these textures, all of that will be available to you on my Patreon page. All right, enough of me talking and dragging this on. Let's continue filling up these meshes with some sort of material, and we can slowly piece together our post-apocalyptic hideout. so that's basically everything. That's the full 3D modeling, UV mapping, and texturing process that I did to create this post-apocalyptic hideout. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's video. Let me know in the comments what you thought about it, and I will catch you all in the next one.